you watching closely?
Yeah, I is.
Why do new movies suck? Or do they? Before we can answer that question, we need to know something about ourselves. We human beings just aren't as logical as we think we are. All of us suffer from biases. Biases? 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 With each bias fighting an unconscious war against our attempts at analytical thought. One of the biggest factors at play in the battle of new movies versus old movies is survivorship bias. It's a form of selection bias where you don't consider all of the films that haven't stood the test of time and only look at the winners, skewing your view of the situation. Combine this with the recency bias, where newer films are more on the forefront of your mind and you're well on your way to shouting at new movies to
Get off my lawn.
Typically, when we compare old versus new, we're drawing on the best movies from a multi-decade span and comparing them to average movies that have recently come out. Even if one of the recent years produces an unusual amount of fantastic films, it still won't be able to compare to a best of list spanning 4 decades.
You're getting on that plane.
I don't understand. What about you?
I'm staying here with him till the plane gets safely.
Not only that, but all of the bad recent movies are still fresh in your mind to make that comparison feel even worse. It's a llamas to T-Rex comparison. Most movies aren't good, never have been and never will be, but we've forgotten all or most of the horrible movies of the past. Unless you watch MST3K.
Hey, you sneezed all over the window.
Which you should.
Let her out! Let her out! She's frozen!
To make it more of a llamas to llamas comparison, we'd have to do something more like comparing all of the wide releases that came out in a recent year to a 1 year span 40 years prior.
Mr. Tibbs.
Failure to communicate.
We rob banks.
Or maybe a list of great movies from the last 30 years to a previous 30-year period, or what have you. But even here, we run into another bias, nostalgia. That is a particularly strong bias that is so powerful, it can lead you to still love a movie even though it has this scene in it. Okay, well that's not quite fair because there are other reasons to love that movie. But all I'm saying is, if there was a scene like that in a newer movie, it would ruin it for me. I still love you, Ex Machina. Plus, the Butch Cassidy bicycle scene was way worse. Come on, way worse. Not even close. Not even close. Way worse. There's nothing wrong with liking something for nostalgic reasons.
Evil! Pure and simple from the 8th dimension!
But if we're going to have a discussion about old versus new, it's good to at least be aware that your preference for one versus the other may have more to do with nostalgia or just a general feeling of familiarity than with how well it's made. Let's try a quick thought experiment where we compare some newer movies with some older ones.
Oh, hell, Macbeth.
Yes, sir! Victory! Yes, sir! Seizies!
Yes, sir!
Every civilization was built off the back of a disposable workforce.
We're not 100% certain about what we're dealing with here.
I can't keep doing this on my own. With these, people.
For the one that tops them all, it's the story of Herbie, the screen's first 4-cylinder star.
What are you doing with my face?
See, Jody, he is kinfolk.
Practically kissing cousins.
Akim Tamirov is Bad Chief Tanamashu. See Dick Van Dyke as the most comically hilarious island castaway of them all.
Who are you?
I'm called Exeter. I'm a scientist like yourself.
But you'd like that, wouldn't you, Sonny? Who are you?
I'm more than machine or man.
Whoa, wait a darn second here, buckaroo. This comparison ain't fair. You done picked all the good modern movies and compared them to a heap of old mediocre movies.
Correct. That comparison wasn't fair. It was purposely designed to reverse the survivorship bias and the unfair comparison bias to try to show, in a slightly exaggerated way, what so often happens in discussions about old versus new films, where someone compares classics spanning a multi-decade period against Transformers and Twilight. The unfair comparison bias pits the best of one group against the worst or average from another group. Let's try a similar thought experiment that tries to reverse those biases, but keep in mind that this experiment can't reverse a myriad of other strong biases, like nostalgia or the inertia of currently held beliefs, but it's a step towards helping us be cognizant of what veils our objectivity. Let's look at the theatrical releases of bad and mediocre movies from 1 year 50 years ago, compare them to good movies of the past 20-ish years.
Teddy, don't believe his lies.
Now, just for fun, let's look at all of the theatrical releases from 1970 instead of just the handpicked average ones. How many of these movies have you seen, or even heard of? There's a reason for that. Older films also have the added advantage of having had more time to be written about in film criticism, and have highly influential people praise them, leading to a kind of canonization. Once canonized, no one wants to be that guy looking like an ignorant fool, talking about how the Tears in the Rain monologue was like bad, like lame, like really lame. This expert bias tends to percolate its way into everyone's favorite movie list, which then leads us into this related phenomenon, which is what happens when expert bias sees bandwagon bias looking all pretty and cute, and 9 months later, you get film school bias. Which leads to these movies being on your public top 6 favoriteest movie list, even though if Anonymous hacked your Netflix watch history, this is what they would find.
Oh, I'm never eating another piece of candy ever again.
High five, don't do it.
Well, yeah, okay, so maybe we human beings aren't as logical as we think we are. But dude, get to which is better. Old movies or new movies?
Okay, here's what I think. I think we have more to explore in part 2 before I give you the objectively true, super unbiased truth about which is better. While you're self-reflecting about how it's cool that other people are biased, but luckily you're not, ask yourself this.
Are you watching closely?
This conversation can serve no purpose anymore. Goodbye.